The cell was cold and dark. Zira sat in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her skin, which should have glowed with soft blue light, was barely visible in the darkness. The Lumina people were known across the galaxy for the beautiful patterns that danced across their skin, showing their emotions like living art. But now, after weeks of imprisonment and torture, Zira's light had faded to almost nothing. She was only 16 cycles old. In human terms, that made her a teenager. She should have been studying with the other young Lumina on her homeworld, learning to control her telepathic gifts and create the music her people were famous for. Instead, she was here, on Krell 9, waiting to die. The fortress world of Krell 9 was a nightmare made real. It stretched across an entire planet, all metal and weapons and soldiers. The Vraxian Empire had built it as a symbol of their power. Thousands of warriors lived and trained here. Hundreds of prisoners from conquered worlds waited in cells just like hers. And tomorrow, Zira would be executed in front of them all. Her crime was simple. She had said no. The Vraxian commander had ordered her to use her telepathic abilities to spy on rebel forces. The Lumina could read thoughts and sense emotions from miles away. It made them valuable to the Empire. But Zira's people were peaceful. They believed that entering another person's mind without permission was wrong. So when the commander gave his order, Zira refused. The Vraxians did not tolerate disobedience. They beat her. They starved her. They threw her in this cell and left her in the dark. And when she still refused, they sentenced her to death. Zira closed her eyes and tried not to cry. She thought about her mother and father, wondering if they were still alive. The Vraxians had invaded her homeworld 3 months ago. The Lumina had no weapons, no armies. They surrendered immediately, hoping mercy would be shown. It was not. Far across the galaxy, on a human exploration vessel called the Horizon's Edge, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and stared at the message on his screen. He had read it 5 times already, but he kept hoping it would say something different. It did not. "Sir, I have cleaned up the audio as much as I can," Lieutenant Amy Parker said from the communications station. She was young, barely 25. But she was the best hacker and signals expert Jake had ever worked with. The message definitely came from Krell 9, and it definitely came from a Lumina prisoner. Jake rubbed his face with both hands. He had not slept well in days. "Play it again." Amy nodded and pressed a button. The speakers crackled to life. The voice was weak and scared, speaking in broken standard language that most species used for trade and diplomacy. "Please, anyone, help me. My name is Zira. I am Lumina. The Vraxians will kill me tomorrow. I am in the detention tower on Krell 9. Please. I do not want to die." The message ended. Jake felt a weight in his chest. "We cannot ignore this," he said quietly. Commander Lisa Grant, his second-in-command, stepped forward. She was older than Jake, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had served in the military for 30 years and had seen more combat than anyone else on the ship. "Captain, Krell 9 is deep in Vraxian space," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "We have a non-aggression pact with the Empire. If we cross into their territory, it could start a war." "I know that," Jake said. "Then you know we cannot risk it. Not for one prisoner. Not when millions of human lives could be at stake." Jake stood up from his chair. He was a tall man, thin but strong, with dark hair and tired eyes. He had been captain of the Horizon's Edge for 3 years. In that time, he had never started a fight he did not need to finish. But he had also never walked away from someone who needed help. "Do you remember first contact?" he asked Lisa. She frowned. "Of course I do. Everyone does. Then you remember the Lumina. When our colony ships got lost in the Vega sector, when we thought we would all die out there, it was the Lumina who found us. They gave us navigation data. They showed us safe routes. They asked for nothing in return." Jake pointed at the screen. That girl's people saved thousands of human lives. And now, one of them is asking us for help. That was politics, Lisa said. The Lumina government made that decision. This girl is just one person. One person who will die tomorrow if we do nothing. Lisa stepped closer, lowering her voice. Jake, I understand how you feel. But you are not just a man anymore. You are a captain. You have a crew to think about. You have orders to follow. You have crew. Orders that say we should explore and make contact with other species. Orders that say we should represent the best of humanity. Jake met her eyes. What does it say about us if we let an innocent girl die because helping her is inconvenient? It says we are smart. It says we know when to pick our battles. No, Jake said. It says we are cowards. The bridge went silent. Every crew member was listening now, even though they pretended to focus on their stations. Lisa's jaw tightened. That is not fair, she said. Maybe not. But it is true. Jake turned to Amy. Can you forge Vraxian credentials? Something that would get us past their security? Amy glanced at Lisa, then back to Jake. Yes, sir. It would not be perfect, but I can make something that would work for a few hours. Good, start on that. Jake looked at his tactical officer, Sergeant Kyle Torres. The man was built like a wall, all muscle and scars. He had been a Marine before joining the exploration fleet. Kyle, I need someone who can handle combat in tight spaces. Someone who will not panic under fire. Kyle grinned. You are looking at him, sir. I thought so. Jake turned to his chief medical officer. Sophie, I need you ready with medical supplies. The prisoner has probably been tortured. She will need immediate treatment. Dr. Sophie Chen nodded. She was small and quiet, but Jake had seen her work miracles with limited equipment. I will have everything prepared. Well, I will have everything prepared. Sir, you cannot be serious about this, Lisa said. Her voice was louder now, almost angry. You are talking about invading a Vraxian military fortress with 4 people. It is suicide. Maybe, Jake admitted. But I am going to try anyway. You can report me when we get back. You can have my command. I do not care. But I am not going to let that girl die. He walked toward the exit of the bridge, then stopped and looked back at his crew. They were all watching him. Some looked scared. Some looked confused. But some, like Kyle and Amy, looked ready. I am not ordering anyone to come with me, Jake said. This is volunteer only. If you want to stay on the ship, I understand. No one will think less of you. Jake 7. I am coming, Amy said immediately. Same here, Kyle added. Sophie stood up from her station. Someone has to keep you idiots alive. I guess it might as well be me. Jake felt something warm in his chest. Pride. Or hope. Thank you. All of you. He looked at Lisa. Commander, you have the ship. If we are not back in 72 hours, return to human space and report what happened. Lisa shook her head slowly. You are going to get yourself killed, Jake. Probably. But at least I will die doing the right thing. He left the bridge with his small team following behind. They had less than 48 hours to plan an impossible rescue. But as Jake walked through the corridors of his ship, he felt more certain than he had in months. The Lumina had helped humanity when they needed it most. Now it was time to return the favor, even if it cost him everything. The stolen Vraxian shuttle moved through space like a predator. It was sleek and dark, covered in armor plating that could withstand hits from most weapons. Amy had done good work. The credentials she forged looked perfect, at least on the surface. Whether they would fool a close inspection was another question. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls. He had flown dozens of different ship types during his career, but Vraxian vessels were strange. Everything was built for beings much larger than humans. The Vraxians were reptilian creatures, standing over 7 feet tall, with thick scales and powerful muscles. Their technology reflected their nature. It was brutal and efficient, with no concern for comfort. Approaching Krell 9, Jake said quietly. Everyone ready? Behind him, Kyle checked his weapons for the 10th time. The sergeant carried a human plasma rifle and several Vraxian energy pistols they had acquired through less than legal means. Sophie organized her medical kit, making sure every drug and tool was exactly where she needed it. Amy sat at the communications panel, her fingers dancing across the controls as she monitored Vraxian military channels. Their security net is active, Amy reported. But I am not seeing any unusual activity. They do not know we are coming. Let us keep it that way, Jake said. Krell 9 filled the view screen ahead of them. The fortress world was massive, covered in weapons platforms and defense stations. Hundreds of ships moved in organized patterns around it, like insects circling a hive. Jake could see the main citadel rising from the planet's surface, a tower of metal and stone that stretched into the clouds. That was where they needed to go. That was where Zero was being held. A voice crackled over the communications system, speaking in the harsh Vraxian language. Amy's translation program converted it to standard language almost instantly. Unidentified transport. Transmit your authorization codes immediately. Amy's fingers flew across her panel. She sent the forged credentials, then held her breath. Seconds passed. Jake's hand moved closer to the weapon controls, ready to fight if their deception failed. Authorization accepted, the Vraxian controller said. Proceed to supply Bay 7. You have clearance for 12 hours. The communications channel went silent. Amy let out a long breath. We are in, she whispered. Jake guided the shuttle toward the fortress. As they got closer, he could see the true scale of Krell 9. It was not just a base. It was a city of war. Thousands of soldiers moved through the streets below. Training grounds stretched for miles. Weapon factories pumped smoke into the sky. This was where the Vraxian Empire forged its warriors. And somewhere in the heart of it, a scared girl waited to die. They landed in Supply Bay 7 without incident. The bay was huge, designed to handle cargo ships carrying food and weapons for the fortress garrison. Their small shuttle looked out of place among the larger vessels. Jake hoped no one would pay too much attention to them. Kyle, you are with me, Jake said as he stood up. Amy? Sophie, you know what to do. Hack the security network and find out where they are keeping Zira, Amy said, repeating the plan they had discussed a dozen times. Then, disable as many cameras as I can, without raising suspicion. And I will set up the medical bay in the shuttle, Sophie added. When you bring her back, she will need immediate treatment. If we bring her back, Jake corrected. Sophie gave him a small smile. When, not if. I have faith in you, Captain. Jake wished he had that much faith in himself. He pulled on a Vraxian officer's cloak they had stolen. It was too large for him, but it would hide his human features from a distance. Kyle did the same. They would not fool anyone up close. But in the chaos of a busy military fortress, they might pass unnoticed long enough to reach the detention tower. The supply bay was crowded with workers loading and unloading cargo. Most of them were slaves from conquered species, working under the watch of Vraxian guards. Jake kept his head down and walked with purpose, like he belonged there. Kyle followed a step behind, trying to look bored rather than nervous. They made it out of the bay without being stopped. The corridors of Krell 9 were wide and tall, lit by harsh red lights that hurt human eyes. Vraxian soldiers marched past in groups, their scales gleaming in the light. Jake counted at least 50 warriors within the first 5 minutes. And that was just one section of the fortress. There are too many of them, Kyle whispered. I know, Jake replied. Stay close, and stay calm. Amy's voice came through their earpieces, quiet but clear. I am in their network. It is heavily protected, but I found a maintenance access point. Give me a few minutes to map out the detention tower. Jake and Kyle moved through the fortress, following the signs toward the central citadel. They had to stop twice to hide when patrols passed too close. The second time, a Vraxian officer actually looked directly at Jake. For a moment, their eyes met. Jake forced himself to stay still, to not react. The officer frowned, then moved on. Either he did not care about one more cloaked figure in the halls, or he had not gotten a good enough look to see that Jake was human. That was close, Kyle muttered. Too close, Jake agreed. We need to move faster. They reached a maintenance corridor that Amy had marked on their maps. It was narrow and dark, clearly not meant for regular use. Perfect for two humans trying to stay hidden. They squeezed through the passage, their footsteps echoing on the metal floor. Okay, I have the layout, Amy said through their earpieces. The detention tower is in the center of the citadel. Zira is being held on the third sublevel, cell 47. But Jake, there is a problem. What kind of problem? They moved her execution time. It was supposed to be in 48 hours. Now, it is scheduled for 6 hours from now. Jake stopped walking. 6 hours? Why would they move it up? 6-9. I do not know. Maybe they are making an example of her. Maybe they just want to get it over with. Amy paused. Wait. I am seeing something else. They are not executing her in the cell. They are taking her to the arena. The arena? Kyle asked. What arena? The main combat arena in the center of the fortress. It looks like they do public executions there. Jake, if they take her to the arena, she will be surrounded by thousands of soldiers. We will never be able to get her out. Jake leaned against the wall, thinking fast. 6 hours was not enough time to reach her cell, break her out, and escape. But if they waited for the arena execution, they would be walking into a death trap. There was no good option. Can we intercept her during transport? He asked. Maybe, Amy said. But the route from the detention tower to the arena is heavily patrolled. And we do not know exactly when they will move her. Then we go to the arena, Jake decided. We wait for the execution to start, and we hit them when they least expect it. Sir, that is insane, Kyle said. We will be outnumbered, 1,000 to 1, I know. But it is the only chance we have. If we try to break her out of her cell, we will never make it through the detention tower security. At least in the arena, there will be chaos and confusion. We can use that. Amy was silent for a moment. I can help with that. I can set up charges throughout the fortress power grid. When you give the signal, I will blow them and cause a blackout. That should give you a few seconds to reach her. A few seconds to save her life, and then fight our way through a fortress full of angry Vraxian warriors, Jake said. No problem. You are crazy, Kyle said. But he was grinning. I am in. They continued through the maintenance corridors, working their way toward the arena. Jake's mind raced, trying to think of every possible thing that could go wrong. The list was long and terrifying, but he had made his choice. He was not going to let Zira die alone and afraid. After an hour of careful movement, they reached an access hatch that led to the upper levels of the arena. Jake could hear sounds from below. Thousands of voices, speaking in the harsh Vraxian language. The execution was popular entertainment, apparently. The soldiers were gathering to watch a girl die. I have disabled most of the cameras in your area, Amy reported, but I cannot get all of them without triggering alerts. You will have to be careful. Understood. Sophie, how are things at the shuttle? Quiet so far, the doctor replied. No one has bothered me. Medical supplies are ready. Just bring her back alive. That is the plan. Jake looked at Kyle. You ready for this? The sergeant nodded. Born ready, sir. They climbed through the access hatch and emerged in the shadows of the upper arena levels. Below them, the arena floor was lit by bright lights. Vraxian soldiers filled the seats, row after row of them. At the center of the arena floor stood an execution platform, and walking toward it surrounded by guards, was a small figure that glowed with faint blue light. Zira. She looked so small compared to her captors, so young and fragile. The guards pushed her toward the platform, and she stumbled, but did not fall. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. A huge Vraxian stepped onto the platform. He wore armor decorated with rank symbols and battle honors. This had to be War Chief Thorak, the fortress commander. His voice boomed across the arena as he began to speak. "Today we execute a criminal who dared to defy the Empire," Thorak declared. "Let this be a lesson to all who think they can resist our rule. There is no mercy. There is no escape. There is only obedience or death." The crowd of soldiers roared their approval. Zira was forced to her knees on the platform. An executioner stepped forward, carrying a massive energy blade that crackled with power. It was designed to cut slowly, to make death painful. The Vraxians believed that executions should be a spectacle. Jake pulled out his weapon and checked the charge. Full power. He looked at Kyle, who nodded. They were as ready as they would ever be. "Amy, on my signal, kill the lights," Jake said quietly. "Ready when you are." Jake watched as the executioner raised his blade above Zira's head. She was not crying. She was not begging. She just knelt there, waiting for the end. Brave until the last moment. "Not today," Jake thought. "You are not dying today." He took a deep breath and spoke one word. "Now." The fortress went dark. Every light in the arena cut out at once. The sudden blackness was total and complete. Thousands of Vraxian soldiers shouted in confusion and anger. Jake heard Thorak bellowing orders, but in the chaos, no one could understand him. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in blood-red light. It was exactly the opening Jake needed. He had already measured the distance in his mind. 40 feet down to the arena floor, 30 feet across to the execution platform. He grabbed the rappelling line he had prepared and kicked off from the upper level. The line sang as it played out, lowering him fast toward the chaos below. Kyle opened fire from above, his plasma rifle spitting bolts of superheated energy. He was not trying to kill anyone yet, just create more confusion. His shots hit the ground near groups of guards, making them scatter and dive for cover. Every second of chaos was a second Jake could use. Jake hit the arena floor hard, rolling to absorb the impact. His rifle was already up and firing before he finished the roll. 2 guards near the execution platform went down, their armor smoking. The executioner spun toward him, his massive energy blade humming with power. Too slow. Jake put 3 shots into the executioner's chest. The Vraxian stumbled backward and fell off the platform. Jake sprinted forward, his legs pumping. He could see Zira now, still kneeling on the platform, her eyes wide with shock and fear. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that the human running toward her was firing at her captors. A guard stepped into Jake's path. The Vraxian was huge, easily twice Jake's size. He swung a massive fist at Jake's head. Jake ducked under it and kept running. He did not have time to fight. Every second mattered. He reached the platform and jumped up onto it. Zira flinched away from him, terrified. Of course she was. She did not know he was here to save her. "I am here to help," Jake said quickly, pulling out his plasma cutter. "Stay still." He did not know if she understood standard language, but she must have sensed something in his voice or his mind, because she stopped moving. Her glowing skin pulsed with fear, but she held still as Jake cut through her chains. The metal fell away, and she was free. Jake grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the edge of the platform. All around them, the arena was erupting into chaos. Kyle was still firing from above, keeping the closest guards pinned down. But more soldiers were flooding into the arena from every entrance. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. And the Vacted, maybe thousands. "Can you run?" Jake asked Zira. She nodded, her eyes locked on his face. He could see intelligence there, and something else. confusion. She was trying to understand why a human would risk his life for her. They jumped off the platform together and hit the ground running. Jake fired behind them without looking, just spraying shots to keep the pursuing guards back. His rifle was already running low on charge. He had known this would happen. There were too many enemies, and not enough ammunition. A Vraxian soldier stepped out from behind a pillar, his weapon raised. Jake started to turn, knowing he was too slow. The soldier fired. The energy bolt came straight at Jake's head. Then Zira grabbed his arm and pulled him sideways. The bolt passed through the space where his head had been a moment before. She had sensed the attack before it came, using her telepathic abilities to see the soldier's intent. "Thank you," Jake gasped. They ran toward the eastern exit of the arena. Kyle was moving to meet them, firing short, controlled bursts to clear their path. But War Chief Thorak had recovered from his initial shock. His voice thundered across the arena, clear and commanding. "Seal all exits. Kill the human. Take the girl alive." Metal doors began to slam shut around the arena. Jake saw their escape route closing and put on a burst of speed. Zira ran beside him, her bare feet slapping against the stone floor. She was weak from imprisonment and torture. But fear gave her strength. They reached the eastern exit just as the door started to close. Jake dove through the gap with Zira, and Kyle followed a second later. The door sealed behind them with a heavy boom. They were out of the arena, but they were far from safe. The corridor ahead was full of soldiers responding to Thorak's orders. Jake counted at least 20 warriors between them and freedom. His rifle was almost empty. Kyle had maybe 30 shots left, and they were protecting a girl who could barely stand. This was going to be bad. "Amy, we need another distraction," Jake said into his communicator. "Working on it," she replied. Her voice was tight with stress. "The security system is fighting back. I can give you one more blackout, but it will only last a few seconds. That is all we need. Do it." The lights went out again. In the darkness, Jake pulled Zira close and whispered to her, "Stay right behind me. Do not let go of my jacket." He felt her small hand grip the back of his uniform. Then the emergency lights came on, and they were moving. Jake fired as he ran, not aiming carefully, just creating chaos. Kyle did the same from behind, protecting their rear. They crashed into the line of soldiers like a hammer into glass. Jake hit one Vraxian with his rifle butt, spinning past him. Kyle shot another in the leg, making him fall into his companions. It was not skill. It was desperation and luck. But somehow they made it through, leaving confused and angry warriors behind them. "Where are we going?" Kyle shouted. "Service corridors," Jake replied. "We cannot fight them head-on. We have to use the spaces they cannot follow." He turned into a narrow maintenance passage, pulling Zira with him. She was breathing hard, her glowing skin flickering with exhaustion. Jake wanted to stop and let her rest, but he could hear boots pounding behind them. The maintenance passages were a maze of tight corridors and crawl spaces. Jake navigated by instinct and the maps Amy had given him, always moving toward the supply bay, where their shuttle waited. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. "They are tracking us somehow," Kyle said. "They should not be able to follow this fast." Jake looked at Zira. Her glowing skin was like a beacon in the dark passages. Of course, the Vraxians could track them. She was lighting the way. "Can you dim your light?" he asked her. Zira looked confused, then understood. She closed her eyes, concentrating. The glow of her skin faded to almost nothing. Now they were moving through near darkness. But at least they were harder to track. They crawled through a ventilation shaft and emerged in a storage area. Jake recognized it from the maps. They were close to the supply bay now. Maybe 500 meters. They might actually make it. Then Thorak's voice echoed through every speaker in the fortress. "Attention all units. The human has rescued the prisoner. They are heading towards Supply Bay 7. All soldiers converge on that location. I want them alive. Do not kill the human. I want him to watch the girl die slowly before we execute him. Jake felt his blood run cold. Thorak had figured out their escape route, which meant the supply bay would be swarming with soldiers by the time they arrived. Change of plans, he said. Amy, we need an alternate exit. Already looking, she replied. There is a secondary hangar on the western side of the fortress. It is smaller and less guarded. If you can reach it, I can bring the shuttle around. Druffin, how far? About 2 kilometers from your current position. 2 kilometers through a fortress full of enemies who now knew exactly what they were looking for. Jake wanted to laugh at how impossible that sounded. Instead, he just nodded. Send me the route. We are moving. They ran through corridors and climbed through access shafts. Jake's legs burned with exhaustion. His rifle was empty now, useless weight on his back. Kyle was limping from a wound he had not mentioned, and Zira was barely conscious, stumbling more than running. But they kept moving. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a patrol of 10 soldiers. Both sides froze for a heartbeat, equally surprised. Then, the Vraxians raised their weapons. Jake pushed Zira behind him and prepared to die fighting. There was no way out this time. No clever trick or distraction. Just him and Kyle against 10 armed warriors. Then, something strange happened. Zira stepped out from behind Jake. Her skin began to glow brighter. Patterns of light dancing across her body. She raised her hands toward the soldiers, and Jake felt something in the air. A pressure, a weight. It was her telepathy, but stronger than he had imagined possible. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Their eyes went distant and unfocused. One of them started to cry, tears running down his scaled face. What is she doing? Kyle whispered. Showing them, Jake said, somehow understanding. Showing them what they have done. Zira was broadcasting her memories directly into the minds of the soldiers. Her childhood on a peaceful world. The beauty of Lumina art and music. The terror of the invasion. The screams of her people as they were enslaved. The pain of torture. The fear of death. She was making them feel everything she had felt. 2 of the soldiers dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. The others stumbled backward, their faces twisted with emotions they had been trained to ignore. Shame. Guilt. Horror at what they had become. It only lasted a few seconds. Then Zira collapsed, her strength completely spent. The spell broke. The soldiers looked at each other in confusion and fear. Jake grabbed Zira and ran before they could recover. Kyle followed, looking back at the soldiers with wide eyes. Did you see that? He asked. I saw it. Keep moving. They ran harder, knowing they had only minutes before the entire fortress came down on them. Jake carried Zira now, her light dimmed to almost nothing. She was unconscious, her body limp in his arms. He had to get her to Sophie. Had to get her to safety. The western hangar appeared ahead, its doors open. Jake could see their shuttle waiting inside, engines already running. Amy had done it. She had brought them a way out, but between them and the shuttle stood War Chief Thorak himself, along with at least 50 of his best warriors. The Vraxian commander's eyes blazed with rage as he saw Jake approaching. You have caused me great embarrassment, human, Thorak said, his voice cold and dangerous. For that, you will suffer before you die. Jake stopped running. He was out of ammunition, out of options, out of luck. But he was not out of courage. He gently set Zira down on the ground, then stepped in front of her. One human, exhausted and unarmed, standing between a girl and an army. You want her? Jake said quietly. You will have to go through me. Thorak smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. That can be arranged. Thorak raised his hand, and his warriors leveled their weapons at Jake. 50 energy rifles, all charged and ready to fire. Jake stood his ground, knowing he was about to die but refusing to show fear. If these were his last moments, he would face them standing. Then Kyle stepped up beside him, limping but steady. His rifle was empty, but he raised it anyway. A meaningless gesture of defiance. "Sir, if you are staying, then I am staying," the sergeant said. From inside the shuttle, Sophie appeared in the doorway. She was not a soldier. She had never been trained for combat. But she walked out onto the hangar floor and stood with Jake and Kyle, a medical kit in her hands instead of a weapon. "We started this together," she said simply. "We end it together." Jake felt something break inside his chest. Not fear. Something better. Pride. He had the best crew in the galaxy. Amy's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I am not letting you guys have all the fun." Triggering the remaining explosives in 3, 2, 1. The fortress shook. Explosions rippled through the power grid, not enough to destroy Krell 9, but enough to cause massive chaos. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Soldiers shouted in confusion. In that moment of distraction, Jake moved. He grabbed Zira and ran for the shuttle. Kyle and Sophie were right behind him. The Vraxians recovered quickly and opened fire. Energy bolts filled the air, sizzling past Jake's head. One hit the ground near his feet, sending up a spray of molten metal. They were not going to make it. Then the shuttle's weapons came online. Amy had taken control of the ship's systems, and now she used the shuttle's guns to lay down covering fire. The hangar became a storm of energy bolts and explosions. Vraxian soldiers dove for cover. Jake reached the shuttle and practically threw Zira inside. Sophie caught her and immediately started checking her vital signs. Kyle turned and fired his sidearm, making the closest Vraxians duck. Jake grabbed him and pulled him into the shuttle. "Go, go, go!" Kyle shouted. Amy was already on it. The shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting them off the hangar floor. But the hangar bay doors were closing, massive metal plates sliding together to trap them inside. "We are not going to make it through," Amy said, her voice strained. "Yes, we are," Jake said, taking the pilot controls. "Hold on." He pushed the engines to maximum power and aimed straight at the narrowing gap. The shuttle shot forward like a bullet. Vraxian soldiers scrambled out of the way. Thorak's voice roared after them. But it was too late. The shuttle squeezed through the gap with meters to spare. Metal scraped against metal, throwing sparks. Then they were out, flying away from Krell 9 into open space. But they were not safe yet. "Multiple contacts incoming," Amy reported. "Vraxian fighters. At least 12 of them." Jake saw them on his sensors. Fast attack craft, armed with missiles and energy cannons. Each one was more than a match for their small transport shuttle. 12 of them together were certain death. "Evasive maneuvers," he said, throwing the shuttle into a hard turn. The fighters opened fire. Missiles streaked toward them, leaving trails of fire. Jake dodged left, then right, then dove. One missile passed so close, he could see its guidance fins. It exploded behind them, rocking the shuttle. "Shields at 60%. Amy called out. "We cannot take many more hits like that." In the back of the shuttle, Sophie worked frantically on Zira. The girl was breathing, but barely. Her skin had stopped glowing completely. That was a bad sign. Lumina only went dark when they were dying. "I need her stable before we can jump to hyperspace," Sophie said. "The stress could kill her." "How long?" Jake asked, spinning the shuttle to avoid another missile. 5 minutes, maybe 10. "We do not have 10 minutes. Kyle was at the weapons station now, firing back at the pursuing fighters. His shots were accurate, but the fighters were too fast and too many. He managed to clip one, sending it spinning away. Jake's hands flew over the controls, performing maneuvers the shuttle was never designed for. He had been a good pilot before becoming a captain. Now, he remembered why. The shuttle twisted and turned through space, dodging fire by instinct and luck. But luck could only last so long. A missile hit their port engine. The explosion threw everyone forward against their restraints. Alarms screamed. The shuttle began to spin out of control. "Engine 2 is gone," Amy reported. "We are losing power." Jake fought with the controls, trying to stabilize their spin. He managed to level them out, but they were sitting ducks now. The fighters were closing in for the kill. "This is it," Kyle said quietly. "We gave it a good shot." Jake looked back at Zira. Sophie had her stabilized, but the girl was still unconscious. He had saved her from execution, only to get her killed in space. Some rescue this turned out to be. Then Amy grabbed his arm. "Jake, I am picking up a new contact. A big one. It is coming from outside Vraxian space. More enemies? I do not think so." Amy's eyes widened as she read her sensors. "Jake, it is the horizon's edge." Jake felt his heart jump. His ship, his crew. They had come for him. The horizon's edge dropped out of hyperspace between the shuttle and the pursuing fighters. It was a beautiful sight. The exploration vessel was not a warship, but it was big and heavily armed enough to make the Vraxian fighters think twice. Lisa's voice came over the communications channel. "Captain Morrison, this is Commander Grant. You look like you could use some help." Jake wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. "Lisa, you violated our orders. You crossed into Vraxian space." "Yes, I did. Court-martial me later. Right now, get your shuttle docked. We are leaving." The horizon's edge opened fire on the Vraxian fighters. Its weapons were not designed for combat, but they were effective enough. 2 fighters exploded immediately. The others broke off, not willing to engage a ship that size. Jake guided the damaged shuttle toward his ship's docking bay. His hands were shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. They made it inside, and the bay doors sealed behind them. They were safe. Sophie was already moving Zira to the medical bay before the shuttle even finished landing. Jake, Kyle, and Amy stumbled out, exhausted and covered in sweat and blood. The hangar crew stared at them with wide eyes. Lisa was waiting at the hangar entrance. She looked angry and relieved at the same time. "You are an idiot," she told Jake. "I know. You could have started a war. I know. You risked the lives of your entire crew. I know." Jake met her eyes. "But would you have done anything different?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Just a little. "No. I would not have. Come on. We need to get out of Vraxian space before they send more ships." They walked to the bridge together. Jake's crew was already at their stations, working efficiently to get the ship ready for hyperspace jump. They looked up as he entered, and someone started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was applauding. Jake felt his face turn red. "Get back to work," he said. But he was smiling. "Course laid in," the navigation officer reported. "Ready to jump on your command, sir." Re. Jake sat down in his command chair. It felt good to be home. "Take us out of here. Best speed." The horizon's edge turned away from Krell 9 and accelerated into hyperspace. The stars stretched and blurred as they left the Vraxian Empire behind. But they were not done yet. Not by a long shot. In the medical bay, Sophie worked on Zira for 2 hours straight. Jake sat outside, refusing to leave until he knew she would survive. Kyle and Amy joined him. All 3 of them, still in their battle-damaged uniforms. Finally, Sophie came out. She looked exhausted, but pleased. "She is going to make it," the doctor said. She was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Multiple broken bones that healed wrong. Signs of torture, but Lumina heal fast when they are safe and cared for. Give her a few days, and she will be back on her feet. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. Against all odds, they had actually done it. "Can I see her?" he asked. "She is sleeping. But yes, you can sit with her for a while." Jake entered the medical bay quietly. Zira lay on a bed, covered with a blanket. Medical equipment monitored her vital signs. Her skin was glowing again, soft blue patterns that pulsed gently. It was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. He sat down in a chair next to her bed and watched her sleep. He did not know what would happen next. The Vraxians would be angry. There would be diplomatic consequences, maybe even war. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, a girl was alive who should have been dead. That was enough. Zira's eyes opened slowly. She looked confused for a moment, then saw Jake sitting beside her. Her glowing patterns shifted to a softer color. "You saved me," she whispered in standard language. Her voice was rough from disuse, but understandable. "Yes," Jake said simply. "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do. But you are human. I am Lumina. We are different species. Why would you risk your life for me?" Jake thought about that. How could he explain humanity to someone who had only known cruelty from other species? "Where I come from, we have a saying," he told her. "We are only as strong as we are kind. Power without compassion is just tyranny. Your people helped us once, when we were lost and afraid. I just returned the favor." Zira reached out with one small hand. Jake took it gently. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for showing me that not all species are like the Vraxians. Thank you for proving that kindness still exists in the galaxy." "Get some rest," Jake said. "You are safe now. I promise." Zira closed her eyes and drifted back to sleep, her hand still holding his. Jake sat there for a long time, watching her breathe and knowing that everything was about to change. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity had just shown them what humans were capable of when they decided to stand for something. The horizon's edge jumped out of hyperspace 3 days later at a human outpost called Delta Station. It was a small facility on the edge of human territory, mostly used for refueling and repairs. But today, it was crowded with military ships and government officials. Word had spread fast about what happened at Krell 9. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the station grow larger on the view screen. He had barely slept since the rescue. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vraxian soldiers and energy bolts, and Zira kneeling on the execution platform. His body ached. His mind was exhausted. But he could not rest. Not yet. "Multiple ships on approach," Amy reported. "I am reading military cruisers, diplomatic vessels, and at least 3 news ships." "News ships?" Lisa asked. "How did they find out so fast?" "Someone leaked it," Jake said. He had expected this. A story like theirs was too big to keep secret. "Probably half the galaxy knows by now." A communication request came through from Delta Station. Jake accepted it. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Admiral Helen Cross, commander of the Human Defense Fleet in this sector. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Captain Morrison," she said. Her voice was cold. "You are ordered to dock immediately and report for debriefing. You and your crew are confined to the station, pending investigation." "Understood, Admiral," Jake replied. "And Morrison? Bring the alien girl. The diplomats want to see her." The channel closed. Jake looked at Lisa, who gave him a sympathetic look. "This is going to be bad," she said. "I know." In the medical bay, Sophie was helping Zira get dressed. The girl had recovered remarkably well over the past 3 days. Her broken bones were healing, and her skin glowed with healthy blue light. But she was still weak and scared. Being surrounded by strangers on a human ship was overwhelming for her. "Where are we going?" Zira asked as Sophie helped her into a simple gray jumpsuit. "To meet with some important people," Sophie explained gently. "They want to ask you questions about what happened." "Will Jake be there?" "Yes. He will be there." Zira relaxed a little. In the 3 days since her rescue, Jake had visited her often. They talked about small things mostly. Her homeworld, his family back on Earth. Nothing too deep or painful, but Zira had come to trust him. He was the first person in months who had shown her kindness. They docked at Delta Station and were immediately escorted to a conference room. The room was large and cold, with a long table surrounded by serious-looking humans in military uniforms and expensive suits. Jake recognized a few faces. Admiral Cross sat at the head of the table. Beside her was Ambassador Paul Chen, the human government's chief negotiator with alien species. Zira stayed close to Jake as they entered. Her glowing patterns flickered with nervousness. Jake put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sit down, Captain," Admiral Cross said. It was not a request. Jake and his crew sat on one side of the table. Zira sat between Jake and Sophie, her eyes darting around the room. The officials on the other side stared at her with various expressions: curiosity, concern, and in some cases, anger. "Let me be clear about the situation," Admiral Cross began. "Captain Morrison, you violated direct orders, crossed into hostile territory, attacked a Vraxian military installation, and rescued a condemned prisoner. The Vraxian Empire has filed formal complaints with every major government in the galaxy. They are demanding that we return the prisoner and hand you over for trial." "I understand," Jake said calmly. "Do you? Do you understand that your actions could start a war? Millions of humans could die because you decided to play hero." Jake met her eyes. "With respect, Admiral, I made the choice I thought was right. The Lumina helped humanity during first contact. We owed them a debt. That debt was paid through diplomatic channels years ago." Ambassador Chen cut in. He was a thin man with a sharp voice. "We had agreements with the Lumina government. What you did was personal and reckless. What I did was save an innocent life." "Innocent?" Chen gestured at Zira. "The Vraxians say she was a criminal, that she refused military orders and aided rebel forces." Zira flinched at the accusation. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "The Vraxians say a lot of things," he replied. "They also said the Lumina attacked them first, which we all know is a lie. They are conquerors and slavers. Everything they say is designed to justify their cruelty." "That may be true," Admiral Cross said. "But it is not your place to decide how humanity responds to that. You are a ship captain, not a policymaker." "I am a human being," Jake said. "And sometimes that is more important than rank or policy." The room went silent. Several officials looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. But Jake did not back down. Ambassador Chen leaned forward. "The Vraxian Empire has given us an ultimatum. Either we return the girl and punish you, or they will consider our non-aggression pact void. That means war, Captain. Are you prepared to accept responsibility for that?" Before Jake could answer, Zira stood up. Her small frame was shaking, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "Please do not punish him," she said in careful standard language. "Jake saved my life. He and his crew risked everything for me. I will go back to the Vraxians, if that is what you need. I will accept execution. Just do not hurt them." The room went silent again. Every eye turned to the glowing girl who was offering to die to save her rescuers. Sophie put a gentle hand on Zira's arm. "Honey, you do not have to do that." "Yes, I do," Zira said. Tears were running down her glowing cheeks. "Humans have been kind to me. I will not let you suffer because of me." Jake stood up and put himself between Zira and the officials. "No. Absolutely not. We did not rescue her just to hand her back to her executioners. If you send her back, you might as well have left her to die in the first place." "Captain Morrison, sit down," Admiral Cross ordered. "No, Admiral. I will not sit down while you discuss sending an innocent girl to her death." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You are walking a dangerous line, Captain. Then court-martial me, strip my rank, throw me in prison, but do not send her back." Ambassador Chen stood up, his face red with anger. "You have no idea what you are talking about. This is bigger than one girl. This is about the survival of humanity." "Is it?" Jake asked. Because I thought humanity was supposed to stand for something better than that. I thought we were supposed to be different from species like the Vraxians. We are different. Chen snapped. We are smart enough to know when we are outmatched. No. We are cowards enough to sacrifice others to save ourselves. The ambassador looked like he wanted to hit Jake. But before things could escalate further, the conference room door opened. A young officer rushed in, looking nervous. Admiral, I apologize for interrupting, but you need to see this. The officer handed a datapad to Admiral Cross. She read it, and her expression changed. She looked surprised, then thoughtful. What is it? Ambassador Chen demanded. It seems Captain Morrison's rescue has had unexpected consequences, the Admiral said slowly. We are receiving communications from multiple species across the galaxy. The story of the rescue has spread, and many conquered peoples are viewing the captain as a symbol of resistance. She turned the datapad so everyone could see. On the screen were news reports from dozens of different worlds, video of the horizon's edge, images of Jake, and recordings of Zira's story. The reports were in different languages, but the message was the same. Humans had stood up to the Vraxian Empire and won. There is more. Admiral Cross continued. The Lumina government has formally requested a military alliance with humanity. They are offering strategic resources and technology in exchange for protection. Several other species are making similar offers. Ambassador Chen grabbed the datapad and read through the reports. His anger slowly faded, replaced by calculation. This changes things, he said quietly. It does. The Admiral agreed. She looked at Jake with new eyes. Captain, what you did was reckless and dangerous, but it may have accomplished something diplomacy never could. You showed the galaxy that humanity will stand for its principles, even when it is costly. So you are not sending Zira back? Jake asked. No. We are granting her asylum. The Vraxian Empire can complain all they want, but we are not giving them ammunition to show the galaxy that we are weak. Admiral Cross stood up. End quote. Captain Morrison, you will still face a formal inquiry for your actions, but I suspect the outcome will be far different than what Ambassador Chen was hoping for. Chen looked like he had swallowed something bitter, but he did not argue. The meeting ended, and Jake's crew was allowed to return to their ship. Zira walked beside Jake, still processing everything that had happened. I do not understand, she said. I thought they would send me back. I thought I would die. Welcome to humanity, Jake said with a tired smile. We do not always make sense, but we try to do the right thing. Eventually, over the next few weeks, the political situation shifted dramatically. The Vraxian Empire threatened war, but they did not follow through. Too many of their subject species were watching, inspired by Jake's rescue. A rebellion started on 3 conquered worlds. The Vraxian military was stretched thin trying to maintain control. Meanwhile, humanity gained new allies. The Lumina government shared technology that improved human ships and weapons. Other species offered trade agreements and intelligence about Vraxian weaknesses. What started as one man's desperate rescue became a turning point in galactic politics. Jake's formal inquiry ended with a reprimand and a promotion. The government needed to show they took military discipline seriously, but they also recognized that Jake had become a symbol. He was promoted to commander and given a new ship, larger and better armed than the Horizon's Edge. But before he took command of his new vessel, Jake had one more thing to do. He found Zira in the gardens of Delta Station. The Lumina loved growing things, and she spent most of her time among the plants and flowers. She was teaching some human children about Lumina music, showing them how her people could make plants grow in harmony with sound. You are good with them, Jake said, sitting down beside her. Zira smiled. Her glowing patterns were bright and happy now, showing colors Jake had never seen during her captivity. Children are the same across all species, curious and kind before the world teaches them to be otherwise. I came to say goodbye, Jake said. I am taking command of a new ship tomorrow. We will be heading back to the frontier. Zira's glow dimmed a little. I will miss you. You saved my life, Jake. I do not know how to repay that. You do not have to repay anything. Just live. Is it? Because I think you gave me something more valuable than life. You gave me hope. Zira took his hand. Before you rescued me, I thought the galaxy was full of cruelty. I thought kindness was dead. But then you came, and you proved me wrong. You showed me that some people still care about doing what is right. Jake felt his throat tighten. I just did what anyone should do. No. Most people would not have done what you did. Most people would have been too afraid or too selfish. But you were brave. And that bravery has changed everything. She was right, Jake realized. The galaxy was different now. Other species were questioning Vraxian rule. Rebel groups were fighting back, and humanity had positioned itself as a protector of the weak and oppressed. All because he refused to let a girl die alone. What will you do now? He asked Zira. I will go back to what remains of my people. I will tell them about you and your crew. I will teach them that there is still hope in the galaxy. Her glowing patterns pulsed with determination. And someday, when we are strong enough, we will help others the way you helped me. That is how we will repay your kindness. Jake smiled. I would like that. They sat together in the garden for a while longer, watching the children play and feeling the warmth of the artificial sun. Eventually, Jake stood to leave. Zira stood with him. One more thing, she said. My people have a saying. The measure of a civilization is not found in its weapons or its wealth, but in who it chooses to protect. By that measure, humanity has just told the galaxy exactly what kind of species you are. And what kind is that? Zira's entire body glowed bright blue, the lumina color for the deepest respect and admiration. The kind worth believing in, she said simply. Jake left the gardens and returned to his ship. His crew was waiting, ready for their next mission. As the vessel pulled away from Delta Station and headed toward the stars, Jake looked out at the vast galaxy before them. Somewhere out there, other prisoners waited in cells like the one Zira had been trapped in. Other innocent people faced execution for refusing to bow to tyrants. And now they knew that humanity was watching, that humans would come if they could, that someone cared. It was a heavy responsibility. But as Jake settled into his command chair and gave the order to jump to hyperspace, he felt ready for it. He had learned something important during the rescue. That power was not about weapons or technology. It was about the willingness to stand up when others would look away. About choosing compassion, even when fear said to be cautious. That was what made humanity special. Not their ships or their weapons, but their stubborn, foolish, beautiful refusal to accept that cruelty was inevitable. The stars stretched and blurred as the ship jumped into hyperspace. And across the galaxy, in prisons and slave camps and conquered worlds, people who had given up hope began to believe again, because one human had looked at an impossible situation and decided to try anyway. And in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy that sometimes the right thing and the easy thing were not the same, and that choosing the right thing was what separated civilization from barbarism. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology or military might, but the simple, powerful idea that every life mattered, that every person deserved dignity and freedom, and that those with strength had a duty to protect those without it. It was a radical idea in a galaxy ruled by species like the Vraxians. But it was an idea worth fighting for, worth dying for, if necessary. Jake smiled as the ship carried them toward new adventures and new challenges. The galaxy was watching humanity now, wondering what these strange, idealistic humans would do next. He could not wait to show them.